Chapter 2.9 The Incentive of Creation. You may recall that the idea of evolution was in the minds of many Darwin's predecessors, from the ancient Greek philosophers of the 6th century BC to Erasmus Darwin. What made Charles's theory so popular? It seems to me that before him, scientists did not have a criterion explaining what drives the evolution. Why do some animals turn into others, which they do not sit still? Charles Darwin proposed a simple and, it seemed, a logical and understandable criterion. Organisms are moving toward improving their survival skill. If a squirrel has the wings, it stops smash on the ground, survives, and can give birth to many other squirrels, also winged. If the giraffe's neck is stretched, he will be able to feast on leaves from the tops of trees and turn into a beautiful and graceful animal, while the camel will pick up thorns and remain an ugly hunchback. At the same time, it looks obvious to us that the vertex reached by evolution to the present moment is called Homo or even Homo sapiens, and this species is the most adapted. There are about 7 billion humans and they dominate the planet. Is the Darwinian criterion plausible? Are there more people on Earth than any other creatures? Let us check this thesis more carefully. There is an animal in the ocean, a sea crustacean called krill. It is tiny and defenseless. Everyone can devour it, from whales and seals to fish, birds, and man. Each krill weighs from 0.1 to 2 grams. The total weight of krill on the earth is twice the weight of all mankind. Who is better suited, krill or man? Total weight of all ants is about 3,000 million tons, compared with the humanity weight estimated at 350 million tons. Total weight of microscopic unicellular prokaryotes is estimated at 350 to 550 billion tons. This is approximately 1,000 times greater than the weight of mankind. We lose to them even by weight, and they successfully survive 4 billion years of very violent history. Prokaryotes are obviously much fitter than a man who appeared on Earth no earlier than 200,000 years ago. Let us ask ourselves, why did not any other Homo line survive? There are no Homo habilis on the planet, not a trace of Homo erectus, Neanderthals have vanished, and Pithecanthropus were wiped out. Perhaps somewhere in the Himalayan snowy slopes, the lonely Bigfoot is wandering, cursing the hard fate and goddamn evolution for creating him so unfit for this cruel life. And we, Homo sapiens, survived quite miraculously. Our genus could be interrupted more than once. Modern scientists claim that we all are the descendants of the so-called mitochondrial Eve, who lived about 150,000 years ago. She became the only one whose offspring reached our days. The lucky girl multiplied, produced many little Cains and Abels, but 60 to 90,000 years later, humanity came to one more bottleneck, the Y chromosome atom. All of us, perhaps, are his descendants. The rest of the men of his tribe did not leave their offspring, or rather, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren did not survive, and the genus was not extended. Adam was lucky. He was not devoured by a saber-toothed tiger, and the overripe coconut did not fall on his head. About 74,000 years ago, there was a huge eruption of the Toba volcano in Sumatra, which led to a sharp atmosphere cooling lasting several centuries. The population of Homo sapiens that were not adapted to the cold climate has dramatically decreased. Our ancestors went through the next bottleneck when their number was reduced to 3 to 10,000 individuals, the capacity of the average concert hall. Man is a poorly engineered animal. He does not have claws, fangs, fur, wings, camouflage. This is one of the few animals whose females give birth in torment and often die from a childbirth. His body does not produce vitamin C, and he suffers from scurvy. In order to survive, he has to come up with substitutes, such as tools and clothing. Our children develop more slowly than even tortoises. Because of the uprightness and the load on the spinal column, we are perhaps the only living organisms in the world who suffer from rheumatism, hernia, and osteochondrosis. The most unadapted creature on the earth is the pinnacle of creation? Have you ever seen flies using air conditioning and polar bears a space heater? Any unbiased reader would acknowledge that the simplest prokaryotes are much fitter. They can eat anything, survive in a wide range of temperatures. They live on the seabed, on the tops of mountains, and even inside other organisms. creatures, including us? What is the point of converting them into more advanced forms? On the contrary, if Darwin were right and the evolution were driven by the natural selection, then the man should be transformed back, first into a monkey, then into a more primitive mammal, and so on, until he reaches the top of survival, the bacteria. But man is the most intelligent, the reader objects, and this claim certainly makes sense or looks like it, just until the time when a smart reader is left in the wild jungle to show his intelligence there, competing with primitive creatures. Harvard professor Joseph Einrich proposed the imaginary exercise. Imagine a game of survival that pits a troop of capuchin monkeys against you and your work colleagues. Both teams would be parachuted into a remote African forest without any equipment, no matches, knives, shoes, fishhooks, clothes, antibiotics, pots, ropes, or weapons. After 1 year, the team with the most surviving members would be declared the victor. Which team would you bet on? You might assume that the humans, given our superior intelligence, are the team to beat. But do you or your colleagues know how to make bows and arrows, nets, water containers, and shelters? Do you know which plants are toxic? Can you start a fire without matches? Can you make fish hooks or natural glues? Do you know how to protect yourself from big cats and snakes at night? The answer to most, if not all, of these questions is probably no, meaning that your team would likely lose to a bunch of monkeys, probably pretty badly. Nonetheless, it is the fact that the development of life on Earth has been going in one direction, an increase in intelligence. But how can we be sure of this? Even the greatest scientists cannot evaluate the IQ of dinosaurs, seagulls, or krill. The best thing we can do is to calculate the approximate ratio K of the animal brain weight MB to the body weight M of the same animal. The dinosaurs, who inhabited about 225 million years ago, did not have much brain. The ratio of the body weight of the Stegosaurus to the weight of its brain was about 50,000. For the whales, this coefficient was approximately 40,000, and whales appeared about 175 million years ago. The genus of dog appeared about 34 million years ago, and their brain weighed already 125th of the body weight. And further development went on the ratio increasing and came to a man with a ratio of K equals 40. Let us return to section 2.4, the evolution of memory, and recall the timeline for the increase in computer memory accumulated by mankind. There are clear similarities between these curves. What did the humanity do in order to cope with the recursively increasing flow of stored information? First, it produces more memory devices, and then there comes a dead end. There is a shortage of energy and resources. Mankind scratches the head and creates new technologies. Why should the global mind act differently? If the volume of biological memory stored in all living organisms grows, global mind increases the number of storage media. He did so from the late Triassic to the end of the Cretaceous, and then it came out the shortage of resources for the sustenance of the growing population of gluttonous but obtuse animals. It was decided to replace the outdated model with a more modern one. The same evolution occurred before our eyes with computers. I put forward the hypothesis that 1. One of the main engines of evolution is the need to preserve the information recursively accumulated in the living world in the whole biosphere as a single organism. 2. Another major factor in the development of the evolutionary process towards the creation of highly intelligent organisms is the need to manage the growing complexity of the biosphere. The second factor also increases recursively. The bulk of biological information is not vanishing with the natural death of a living organism, but is transmitted to subsequent generations. But why biological memory is not lost? Why should it add up? If the living organism is dead, then does not all the information related to it disappear? From the point of view of primitive materialism, it should be so. And how things stand in reality, we learn from the next section. Let us recall the quote from Ben Jacobs' article, Bacterial Self-Organization, Co-Enhancement of Complexification and Adaptability in a Dynamic Environment. I propose that the information communication between individuals makes possible the enhancement of the individual's regulated freedom while increasing their cooperation. This process is accomplished via cooperative complexification of the colony through self-organization of hierarchical spatiotemporal patterning. The colonial higher complexity provides the degree of plasticity and flexibility required for better colonial adaptability and endurability in a dynamic environment. The biotic system can modify the environment and obtain environmental information for further self-improvement. I reflect on the potential applications of the new understanding on engineered self-organization of systems too complex to design and other issues. It is hardly possible to argue against against the fact that the total amount of accumulated information is growing and is growing with acceleration. Let us try to imagine how it happened at the very beginning of time. To do this, go to one of the most difficult and controversial sections of our book. In it, we will consider a question that is not, and most likely, will not receive an unambiguous answer. How did life begin? Our task is to show the fundamental possibility of spontaneous generation of life on the basis of available rigorous scientific data.